Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with great guests, Jimi Fritz. Let's welcome Jimmy. How are you, sir?
Excellent, thanks. Hello from Canada.
Okay, great. How are things going in Canada now?
We're doing very well, actually. We're going into, reopening, and we
Okay,
should be back to normal in about a month or so. So we're opening slowly and getting more freedoms. Travel restrictions have just been lifted, and the restaurants are open, and so we're moving into the final stages of normalcy.
okay, great. I can't wait for that. I was gonna come to Canada to check out things, but because of the COVID, we couldn't travel.
Right. Well, you can now. Well, I don't know about the US. The border's still open, I think, for another few weeks, but closed for a few weeks. But
Oh,
it'll be open soon enough.
okay, great. Yeah, looking forward. So, tell me about yourself, Jimmy. I know you're an author on great books. So, tell me about that.
Well, I've been writing on and off all my life, but I'm also a musician and a filmmaker and an entrepreneur. I went to film school and I started writing at film school, writing screenplays. So I've written a couple of feature-length screenplays
Hmm.
and numerous magazine articles and whatnot. And then about 20 years ago, I wrote a book called Rave Culture: An Insider's Overview,
Hmm.
which is a book about rave culture.
Hmm.
That's available on Amazon and fine bookstores everywhere.
Wow.
And it was basically about the rave scene, which I got into about 20 years ago. And then I started promoting raves.
Hmm.
And so I wrote the book about that because I thought it was I thought it was something important culturally and socially that was going on and needed to be
Hmm.
exposed. So that was my motivation for that one. And most recently, I've written Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer
Hmm.
by Jimi
Wow.
Fritz, also available everywhere online and fine bookstores everywhere. So that's just 2 months ago that was published
Mhm.
through Ingram Spark. And I'm getting some really good reviews and some really good feedback.
No. Would love to actually read and also give our audience a taste of your book. So, tell me a little bit about, for audience learning purpose, what is psychedelic and what is psychedelic therapy?
What is psychedelic therapy? Well, it's using psychedelics to put you in a state of mind where you're very receptive. In the case of MDMA therapy, it expresses anxiety centers in the brain, and so that you can relive traumatic experiences without any emotional, issues.
Mhm.
So it's mostly MDMA. It will be a prescription drug within the next year or two for PTSD,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of people with PTSD, during the Afghan wars and the Iraq war and whatnot. So there's a lot of soldiers that are in really bad shape
Mhm.
from PTSD, and they're reliving these experiences as if they're still happening. They're happening right now in this moment, and they
Mhm.
can't shake it, because what normally happens with an experience is you put it into your long-term memory, and then you can see it objectively, and you're not reliving it every second. Well, they are. And one way to put it back into your long-term memory is MDMA seems to be really effective for that. They're getting incredible results. They're doing third stage studies now through MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies.
Mhm.
And they're in the final stages. So within the next year or so, it should be a prescription medication for PTSD. It's the only thing that's really worked so far consistently and very effectively.
Mhm. So what you're saying is, of course, MDMA and other few other drugs, they were not classified as medication. Now they would be used as more medication. So that is amazing, change of the medication regimen, especially. Good news is there's a treatment, another avenue where, people who have severe PTSD or depression or mood disorders can get the benefits, right?
Yeah, there's a government more, and also psilocybin, ketamine, DMT, all these things, LSD.
Hmm.
Most of the psychedelics now are being looked at for, because they've been illegal since the 60s. Nobody's been able to do any research on them. But I mean, the people that been using them for the last 50 years, like myself,
Mm.
realize what some of the benefits can be, and they can be huge.
Mm.
So, and not just for therapy, but for creativity and opening your mind and just enriching your life in many ways.
Mm.
So, these are things that are coming to light now because there's more and more government-sponsored studies. There's
Mm.
one recently in our area in BC. They've just licensed mushrooms, magic mushrooms of psilocybin, to be
Mm.
used with end-of-life issues.
Mm.
People that have extreme anxiety in the end of their life, and they're doing trials right now. I know some people involved in that, and they're getting great results. And it's just another avenue. There are several places in the States now where they're licensing psilocybin research
Mm.
and even LSD research. So these things are all coming to light. I mean, there was research back in the 50s and 60s, but it
Mm.
all got shut down when these things hit the scene, and they were made illegal.
Mm.
So that put a stop to any type of therapy or any type of research that was going on.
Mhm. And I think that's a great discussion because there are a lot of things right now still. Marijuana is one of them too.
Yeah,
That is on the table. I mean, there is a proper use, of course. People, and the question is always, I always try to make sure patients are educated and everybody is educated. The difference between medication and poison is the amount and the way you use it. So the same medication can become poison if you abuse it.
of
So
course.
same even stands for Tylenol. If you are going to use it for different reason, then this will become poison.
Yeah, and it's all about the use and setting. You can have a few glasses of wine with dinner and have a lovely dinner party, or you can drink a whole bottle of vodka in one go and get some disastrous results.
Yeah, so this is very important for everybody to understand. Um,
Yes.
so that's where I think most of problem arise. Can they keep the control? And then, so tell me about your book. What was the inspiration behind your book?
Well, it's basically the inspiration is my life. I started doing psychedelics at 15 years old, and
Mhm.
I'm 65 now. So it's basically a 50-year journey of buying, selling, experimenting with psychedelics, and how that's affected my life. So it's all the stories for the last 50 years involved with psychedelics. That's the overarching theme is psychedelics, but it's also a memoir. I call it a travelogue, psychedelic travelogue and memoir.
Hmm. So, what was it, as you said, back in many years ago, still it was kind of controversial, but at that time was very taboo and it was very hard to get even to mention that. So, what was like when you first tried it? And was that like, uh, you know, how did you start?
Oh, I started, at the back of the pub in the woods, smoking a joint with a friend, and he pulled out a piece of hash. I was 15 years old, and we smoked a joint and we walked home, and it pretty much, I guess, changed my life really because it made me think, oh, there's a different way of thinking, there's a different way of being, there's a different way to experience life, and that was the beginning of that journey.
Hmm.
So I've had nothing but positive benefits from psychedelics through my years of use, and most of the people I know, I could say the same thing of. And that's something we have to separate out. When we talk about psychedelics or drugs, you have to
Hmm.
figure, what are you talking about? Psychedelics are non-addictive. They have a lot of benefits, and you
Hmm.
have to you have to tease that out from discussions about crack and cocaine and meth and all this. That's a completely different world and one that I've never been involved in. So you have to know the difference.
Hmm. That's true. So tell me about, you said you were age 15 and first time. Why did you think you started it? Was that more experimentation or was there some symptoms were you having?
No, no, it was just for fun.
Oh,
Just
for fun.
a friend of mine said, "Here, check this out." I said, "Okay." I was, pretty open to suggestion. So, and I guess says something about being open-minded, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but what psychedelics do is they take an open mind and they make it even more open.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
So
that's what they did for me.
it was more of experimentation, and was not that you were sad, depressed, and you needed
No, no.
to get high.
I've never used psychedelics therapeutically
Uh,
because I've never needed therapy.
okay.
So I've always done them for inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
creativity, to make extraordinary experiences even more extraordinary, to amplify and to improve and enhance the quality of my life. That's been my use. And I hope that we get there soon. I mean, right now, people are just legitimizing psychedelics for therapeutic uses, and they do have that purpose, but they also have beyond that. They
Mm-hmm.
have a great value in providing inspiration and creativity and new ways of thinking about the world and new ways to solve problems in the world. So there's that aspect too, which is always a bit far behind. It's like that with marijuana. Everybody's been smoking dope for 50 years, and then all of a sudden, it's legal, and they're saying, oh, it's good for this and it's good for that, and CBDs are good for depression and whatnot. But the real value for me for
Mm-hmm.
marijuana was to elevate my mood, change my thinking, change my mind,
Mm-hmm.
provide inspiration, and that's the other side of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as valuable.
So, do you think also about some when you took it first time, or did you experience? I know you talk a little bit about creativity and some of those feelings. What about side effects? Did you have any side effects?
I've never had a negative side effect from any drug that I've experimented with.
Mm-hmm. So, were you careful with the dose, or I mean amount?
Absolutely, it's critical. Dosage and frequency is absolutely critical. Set and setting is absolutely critical. Set is the frame of mind you're in, and setting is the ambience or the environment which you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can have terrible time on psychedelics if you do them inappropriately, if you do too much, if you do them too frequently, if you do them in the wrong frame of mind or the wrong place, you can have a terrible time. But
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much the same with any human experience, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But it is
Yeah.
important to educate yourself, and it's important to know why you're doing them. And that's the difference between people that do psychedelics and people that do coke and crack and meth and heroin. Those people have trauma. Those people are trying to escape from their lives. They hate themselves, they hate their lives, and they want out. And the only way out is this respite that they get from the drug. So they get out of it. I've only ever done drugs to get into it. And that's the complete opposite reason to do a drug.
Mm. So you were using more for, like you said, to be in it, not out of it. Like
Exactly.
yeah.
To
So
get
there's
more out of life, and not to mask life or screen it out or escape, but to actually get more involved.
yeah, I see that. So what about any other beside? Did you try one type, or different types?
I've tried most psychedelics: DMT, psilocybin, LSD,
Okay.
marijuana, and the empathogens, MDMA. I did a lot of MDMA because I was going to raves for many years, and I promoted raves for a few years. I did about 30 different events, and
Yeah.
so that
And
really.
what about mushrooms?
Oh yeah, psilocybin, yeah, magic mushrooms. Yeah, I've done
Magic
quite a bit of that.
Okay. So where were you getting that? Is it sold, or forest, or outside, or?
No, usually from growers. There are some very experienced growers who grow usually psilocybin cubensis. That's the most commercially grown mushroom, and they'll grow them in a grow room. It's very difficult to grow mushrooms. Actually, I tried once and failed. But if you get it, you have to get a sterile environment. You have to have an autoclave to sterilize and inoculate the mycelium from the spore prints, and you have to sterilize every jar and all the grain that goes into the jar. And it's a really laborious and really technical process. But once you get it down and you get all your procedures down, you can produce mushrooms successfully. So some people do. It's a lot of work. So like I say, I tried once and failed, gave it up, and I prefer to buy them.
So also tell me a little bit about mushrooms, since we are talking about there are, poisonous ones too with it. So how do you differentiate? You were buying from authentic source, or did you ever get sick?
No, no. I mean, people that are growing mushrooms to sell them as magic mushrooms, they're
Mhm,
growing only psychedelic mushrooms. They
mhm,
wouldn't grow a poisonous mushrooms. It's easy to tell the difference
mhm.
because they buy
And
the spores for a specific mushroom. There are, half a dozen different kinds of cubensis that people grow commercially. Cubens, psilocybin cubensis is one of the most common ones, but there's senescence and a few others that people grow. But they know what they are because that's what they're intending to grow. They don't just grow a mushroom and see what happens.
mhm.
They get the
Other question I have is if people are getting these some of the drugs and things from street, what's the quality like? Is it do you have to? How do you make sure the quality is good?
it's a minefield, and it's a big problem, and it's a problem that's been created by prohibition because there are underground sources. Some people are better at doing these things than others. So you have to find
Mm-hmm.
good reputable sources. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to spend a bit of time going there. You can't just buy anything from anybody on the street. So I've always been associated with people that are
Mm-hmm.
producing the drugs in proper laboratory conditions, or if they're making MDMA, they're a qualified chemist, and the stuff is tested,
Mm-hmm.
and you buy it in a crystal form. So it's not press tabs are those are the pills that you buy. There can be anything. I have a chart on my wall in my office. There's about 200 pills, and every one of them has additives in it. Sometimes benign, sometimes not so benign, sometimes dangerous. So yeah, you need to test your source, and you need to be very careful because there's a lot of sketchy drugs out there, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why we need to legalize some of these things so that we avoid those problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is important discussion because the quality, because if a lot of people are going to use it, then you want to make sure the quality is good, because
Exactly.
otherwise people will get sick from
Yes.
these ba- and then that will be a big issue. I mean, it reminds me of very similar program we had for a drug abuse, needle exchange or something. If you remember that, they would do that, give no question asked, but they want to make sure you don't contract other diseases from that.
Yeah,
So.
there's harm reduction methods, and they're being used in very successfully in a lot of places now. In Vancouver, in BC, they're just debating it in City Hall right now to legalize all possession of all drugs
Mhm.
in smaller amounts, and they already have safe injection sites so that people on the street, and it's a very sketchy place to buy drugs, on the street, they can go into a place and get it tested, and then use sterile needles in a sterile environment, and then get access to services and to rehab if they want it. So it's a better way to go, and it prevents a lot of problems.
Mhm. Mhm. So also, so you're saying in Canada there are different parts where there's still a big difference in opinion about its use, right?
Yeah, like I say, there is a government sponsored and sanctioned psilocybin trials going on right now, so
Hmm.
that's a big change.
Yeah.
MDMA. There's a Canadian arm of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and they've done more research and more for the acceptance of therapeutic psychedelics than any other organization on the planet. So
Hmm.
they've done some incredible work, and they have a MAPS Canada. They're doing MDMA research. They're doing some research into ibogaine and also psilocybin. So all these things are accelerating right now. I mean, for the last chapter of my book, I was the second to last chapter. I sort of summed up what was going on, how attitudes towards psychedelics have changed over the last 40 years, and what's going on today in terms of research and around the world. And when I researched that, it was just overwhelming. Like, there were just so many studies going on in so many different countries with so many different psychedelics. It was very hard to summarize that. I mean, that could be a whole book in itself, just summarizing, just listing all the studies. So I had to kind of pare it down and just give the impression that lots of things were going on in lots of different places. But there's a real boom. We're on, we're on the verge of a revolution in psychedelic psychotherapy, and it's happening very quickly. There are a lot of companies now that are set up to produce psychedelics, and so they're getting licensed, and there's a lot of investors jumping in because they're thinking this is the next big boom, this billion-dollar industry that's about to burgeon. And so we're good to go. We're on the takeoff landing, takeoff the strip or whatever. We're ready to blast off.
Okay. Also, I want to ask you, is it the effect is different on different population as well as different ethnicities, or no?
I don't think so. I think a human brain is a human brain, regardless of their accidental geographical location.
Okay. Now, like, some might be able to tolerate more dose than the other. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't know its specific differences, but that just means you need to regulate the frequency and dosage. I mean, I have friends who can take one toke of a joint and go to the moon, and other friends who can drink, can smoke 20 joints a day and not get high. So that's the difference, the human brains in my immediate circle. So there is a lot of variation. And you have to deal with that. That's part of the education, and that's part of doing psychedelics responsibly. It's very different for for different people. Some people do 20 micrograms of acid, and they're hallucinating. Some people need 200 micrograms of acid to hallucinate. So it's it's very, very different. Everybody's different. So you have to find your own level and your own dosage and frequency to get the maximum benefits and the minimum side effects. And to do that, you have to start very low and then just creep up very slowly and responsibly. And you get your optimal dose. And that will change over time as well.
Also, I want to ask you that I saw that here you got your vaccine, right?
Yes, I got my second dose yesterday.
Okay, great. Congratulations. How did you develop any side effects?
No, nothing at all.
Okay, great. So
I had Pfizer for the first one and Moderna for the second one.
Oh, okay.
Didn't feel
everybody who's watching, make sure get COVID shot. Don't be scared. That's gonna really help you from getting the worst disease. So that's always helpful to make sure everybody's staying or getting the message. So don't ignore that.
Exactly. No, it's the only way out, right? I mean, it's the only way out of this thing is to get vaccinated. And you can see the effect of the vaccination programs is as the vaccinations go up, the thing disappears. I mean, it's really dramatic effect. So there's no doubt that it's the most effective thing to do. And people that are worried about the side effects or whatever, I mean, really, it's really minimal. We have a situation now where you have hundreds of millions of people that have been vaccinated, and there's almost no issues at all. It's statistically insignificant, effects. So it's about the safest, most effective drug ever invented, I think. This, particularly the mRNA.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is unique, and you will see probably down the road, all other vaccine will be changed to mRNA technology, as well as a lot of other disease. It can actually work too. So imagine if we can inject or fix the insulin in diabetes, and then your cells produce that. So imagine the sky is the limit here. So yeah, I think this is gonna be beginning. So I'm very exciting about that. So also, any final message for our audience?
Well, everybody should definitely read my book. It's Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer by Jimi Fritz. It's hilarious. It's insightful, and you'll learn a lot about psychedelics, and it's also very funny. So it's available online everywhere, and fine bookstores everywhere.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and educating us, and especially also, this is coming from somebody who really not only wrote the book but also experimented and used it for many years, right?
Right.
So it's not that you had a ghostwriter. So,
No. It's all first person.
so that's the real person. Okay, thank you once again. Take care.
All right. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.